Alright, we're back on the Kawasaki 1500 classic engine removal. That's so we can service our valves later. We made a little progress on it. We got the exhaust system off, we got the foot pedal off, master cylinder, which is here, reservoir. Everything went pretty straightforward. I got a little tip for everybody. What I like to do is whenever I take something off, particularly any part, here's your reservoir. Take the screw out, take the reservoir off, stick the screw back in it, little electrical tape. Here's my cover. Do the same thing. Put the screw back in the hole, little electrical tape. There'll be no looking for these screws later, no sorting 50 screws on the table trying to figure out which one goes in which hole. We'll have them ready to go. Alright. I pulled off this foot peg mechanism here, and the master cylinder bolts to the back side of that. Not too many problems with that. You do, however, on the back of this, it's a spline shaft. Now that spline shaft fits that clamp on that reservoir, has to go over that to engage it. Trick to getting this off is, I'm going to grab this camera here and show you. And this just works good for me, especially on an older bike. This is the clamp here. See if I can get it on there good. And you can see the split in the side of it here, right there. You take this bolt out. The bolt has to come out. You can't just loosen it because there's a groove in that shaft it's like a safety. The bolt has to come out. Then what I like to do is take a flathead screwdriver, a small one, and this one here, and I'll put the flathead screwdriver in the slot. Let me see if I can get it in the camera here. And I'll tap it a few times. And what that allowed me to do, is tapping that screwdriver in that slot, is it'll open it just enough where it'll slide off easily without giving me too much problem. But just before you do that, one little tip here for you, this thing can go on any combination. And so when you go to put it back together, you can run into an issue where your foot pedal ends up being on that shaft. So if you want to put it back to its original location, so I'm not trying to bolt it together 10 or 12 times till I find out, probably hard to see. Let's see if we can get the mark there. And I think you can see it. I made a little scratch right here, which is going to line up with my slot there. Now I know that's the original location. I'll put it together, it'll be right. I won't have to take it apart several times trying to get it. Another thing I've come across too was, let me set the camera back up here. I guess that was the close-ups I needed to show you. Was when I took this off, this foot pedal, this brake lever, seemed to move kind of difficult. It was squeaking a little bit, it seemed to bind a little bit, so while I had this off, I decided to remove it and see if I could grease it up. Well, to get this foot pedal off, it won't completely slide out of here because it hits your foot peg. So, I moved the foot peg a little bit. The foot peg has a spring loaded too. It was squeaking. I flipped it over, I removed this spring, a couple little clips, took a pin out this way and a pin out that way, and then that came off, and then the brake pedal shaft came out. Well, it was rusted. Probably had lubrication on it from the manufacturer, I'm assuming, but I went ahead and wire wheeled it, put a little grease on it, nice and smooth, put my foot pedal back on there, put the two pins back in, same with them, wire wheeled them, a little bit of grease, no more squeak, nice and smooth. And when you're all done with the job, it'll just be less squeaks and creaks and stuff you hear, as you're riding it. Alright, another issue I have with the exhaust. On the exhaust, get this down a little bit. You had a mount right here, and that mounted back here. Got a couple bushings, wasn't bad, took it off, reinstalled the bolt, the nut, that way I know where those go. You have two bolts, two studs that come out of the block, out of the engine block here and here, and there's a nut on the back side. Had a little trouble, I can't find it. I'm supposed to keep track of my nuts and bolts. But anyway, the stud had corroded. There it is right here. So it was the back one here, the hardest one to get to. So I was trying to get that nut off. I moved a little bit. I got a little worried. I mean, the engine block is aluminum. These are steel. If you use to break one off, especially if you use to break it off flush with the block, well, you're going to be in trouble. You may even have to go as far as removing the cylinder and take it to a machine shop and getting some work done on it. Fortunately, the whole stud came out, so I don't have to worry about that. I'll clamp this stud in the vise, maybe put a little heat on the nut, it'll come off. But this was installed by the dealer, these aftermarket pipes, and if you had put a little bit of anti-seize on there, we wouldn't be having this situation now. So I can't stress, buy yourself a little can of anti-seize. I like the nickel, cost a little bit, but you buy one, I don't know, 4 or 6 ounce can, whatever they come in, probably last you forever. A little bit goes a long ways, and when you go back to take something apart, it'll come apart no problem. We'll be having to get some new gaskets for these exhausts. There's little ring gaskets that go in there. Matter of fact, that one just fell out. These are a one-time use gasket. When you clamp the pipe on there, they compress, but they don't, it's just a one-time use. So that's something we're going to have to buy. But anyways, we're in pretty good shape. This is the side of the engine this is the side of the bike that you remove the engine. And that's why we're moving more on this side than the other side. And I'll show you a couple spots. Right here are the 2 bolts to separate this section of frame. There's 2 bolts here, 2 bolts there. After we get everything removed, engine mounts out, that section of frame will actually come out. With the radiator removed and the gas tank removed and whatnot, and everything unhooked, when it's ready to come out, this motor will slide slightly forward to give me some clearance in the back, and down and out. With the removal of this frame, that'll give us access. So, but that's going to be probably the last thing we do. For now, we got a few more things to remove. We got radiator hoses, we got the gas tank, we have fuel lines, and whatnot. My next move is to go ahead and remove the gas tank. To remove the gas tank on this 1500, probably similar to other bikes, we have 3 bolts up here, 2 here and 1 here. You don't need to remove all 3, you remove just this one. With that bolt removed, the front of this, it hooks into a rubber bushing. So we'll just push this whole unit forward slightly and up, and it'll be separated. Once it's separated, you'll be able to get your hand up underneath, unscrew the nut securing your speedometer cable. There'll be several plugs that connect all your wiring for all your lights. You unsnap your plugs, and then this will be free and you can remove it. Underneath of here, there's 1 bolt going through a rubber bushing to hold your gas tank to the frame. 1 here and 1 back here under the seat. Once you get the seat removed, there'll be a bolt there. You remove those. Now you're about ready to take your gas tank off. It'll be loose. You'll raise the gas tank up, and underneath the gas tank there'll be several wires. One plug will go to your fuel gauge. You'll have a hose for, I guess it's for a breather hose, and I guess there's a hose that goes back in the engine for pollution or whatever. You'll have your fuel lines, but when we get to there I'll show you. That'll be probably my next step, is removing the seat and stuff, so I'll get that going on that, and we'll get back to this video.